Kabloom class for this set. I have done multiple recordings of this. I've actually already done the Meggrow and the Smarty set. I always go over time on this set, class, for whatever reason. So I'm going to stop talking in such depth about these cards. I'm going to talk in depth about a couple of them, which I think I really should. But there's a couple that aren't that important, which I was really talking a lot about. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to try and skip quickly over some of these. But anyway, the first one I will talk in detail about because it's something that I think we really should talk about because there's definitely potential for this to be bad. So my idea with the Kabloomy card class for this set is to try and hit that sweet spot. Again, these aren't becoming real cards or anything, but I mean, if they were to become real cards, I'm planning for this set to make Kabloomy a class that's good for aggro. I want aggro to be viable, and I want it to be fun, but I do not want it to be really competitive. So, I think that's the best place for aggro to be. If there is absolutely no aggro in the meta, although I would like that, at the same time, that means that the meta is less diverse, and so, you know, it's a bit more of a boring meta. So it has to kind of be there, but at the same time, the worst kind of meta is a meta where aggro is the best strategy. So you definitely don't want it to be the best. Control or ramp tend to be the best ones to try and make good. And then there's like... you just want to keep it at that point where, like, you can run it, but if someone is skillful and they're running a control deck, then they're probably going to beat them. So anyway, this card, I feel like, is a good example of making aggro cards that are fun and are, like, viable, but not broken, hopefully. Western Wildberry, Kabloom Uncommon Berry Plant, 1/2/1. While this is in your hand, if there was an empty ground lane, charge into one at random. So, since I used the charge mechanic with Vigilantry, I hadn't planned to use that in that set, and it was kind of a last-minute addition. So I thought I should try and make a couple extra cards based around this mechanic, so it doesn't feel like it's just kind of shoehorned in. And I felt like the Kabloomy class was the best class to add in this mechanic. So, this could be broken. In a nightmare situation, you're playing either Spadeau or Knight at cap, and you start with Rain as your starting power, and 3 of these in your starting hand. You can't have 4 because, you know, there's only 3 ground lanes, and these don't have team up. Then, as soon as you hit Let's Play, boom, you haven't, turn 1 hasn't even technically started, and you've already got 3/2/1s on the board for your opponent to deal with, and then on top of that, you can then Rain to make it 3/3/2s for 9/6 worth of stats on turn 1. That is a nightmare situation, and that's my only concern with this card, that would be a big problem. But at the same time, that seems extremely unlikely, and something that would only happen in miracle situations. Majority of the time, you're going to get 1. If you get lucky, you'll get 2. But even with 2, while that is kind of bad, it's basically Infinity's power. And this does take the card out of your hand. And also, this is going to be extremely bad to draw later in the game. So although it gives you a strong start, it is going to severely impact you later on. So yeah, I think this card is overall balanced. Then there's Coffee Bean. Basically, I don't like Espresso Fiesta, and I wanted to make the Coffee Bean a more fitting card with Mushroom synergy like it had in Plants vs. Zombies 1. So now, it's a 1-cost bonus attack for Mushrooms that also draws you a card and gives it +1 attack. It does not do the bonus attack if it's not a Mushroom, but it does the other effects. Then there's Madshroom. Kabloom Uncommon Mushroom Plant, 3/3/2. When played, conjure a wild and wacky card. Again, that's a card from this set, and this does a bonus attack. End of turn, move this to a random lane. So basically, this is another example of aggro trying to make it this point where it's viable but not crazy. I have gone on about this card because it's a little bit weird quite a few times in the other failed recordings, so I'm going to make it quick this time. Basically, it's badly statted, which technically is bad for aggro decks, but at the same time, it gives it fuel that aggro decks needs. Face damage because it moves out the way constantly, and cards. Even if it's Conjure, I couldn't make it draw a card, otherwise I feel like it'd be too powerful. Even if it's just Conjuring, yeah, it makes it, like, viable for aggro decks, but at the same time not too out of control. Then there's Sharpshooter Shroom. Kabloom Rare Mushroom Plant, 2/3/2, aimed, ammo 3. So this is probably my favourite new mechanic out of the ones I thought of. Aimed means instead of having to attack in its own lane, this plant gets to choose which zombie attacks. I should actually rephrase that. That was what I thought at first, and I would edit it, but again, I don't want to ruin the order. But I thought actually it should probably be choose which lane. That just feels more fitting. And if the lane is empty, it will hurt the zombie hero, but otherwise it'll just hurt whichever zombie's in that lane. So yeah, being able to choose which lane you do your 3 damage in is actually a pretty big deal, which is why I think it justifies it being its only ability and also having ammo 3. It's going to be hard to keep this alive, but if you do manage to keep this alive, you've got to realise that this is 3 berry blasts for the price of 1. So, yeah, I think this is actually worth its cost, even though it might seem a little bit strange for a rare to have that as its only ability. Then there's Ricochet Raisin. Kabloom Rare Berry Fruit Trick. 2 Sun. Deal 1 damage to a random zombie 4 times. Draw a card. This is a berry blast that does 1 more damage and also draws you a card. For the price of, first of all, it's a card that you actually have to get in packs or craft, which makes it more valuable instantly. And also the fact that the damage is randomly split and can't go face. I would talk more about it, but that's a trap, and I've lost loads of video time going over that too much in the past. Double Buried Shotgunner. This is probably my favourite Kabloom card. No, our second favourite Kabloom card. We'll get to my favourite one in a moment. Kabloom Super Rare Berry Plant 3/3/2. Ammo 2. When this attacks, do 1 less damage to certain zombies in the lanes next door too. So this is kind of like a 3/3/2 repeater. Only like it does 1 less damage as I say in the other lane, so it's not quite that crazy. But yes, every +1 attack you give this will count for +3 technically in the grand scheme of things. But while this might seem crazy, and it kind of is, because this is technically a 3/7/2, this is the reason why you might actually want to have reloading and adding ammo in your decks. As I said, some of the cards earlier had so much ammo that the chances are the plants would either be dead or no longer useful by the time that you ran out of ammo. So there wasn't much point in having to add ammo unless it was a card that specially got buffs from having ammo. But this is an example of a card you could genuinely see yourself reloading. It's so good at defending itself, even with only 2 health. With the splash damage it does, and the fact it's a berry, so it's got so many ways to activate things with Strawberry and electric current. It can defend itself for at least 2 turns realistically, and then you might actually want to reload it just because of the amount of power 1 bullet has. Then there's Spore Shot. This is a 3 Sun, deal 4 damage, but only 2 of it is where you want, and 1 of it is next door, so it's a little bit of a damper on the thing there. I would consider that about 2 Sun worth of value. It's about a Berry Blast's worth, because it's a little bit more damage than a Berry Blast, but a little bit less controllable. Then summon a random 2 Cost Mushroom in that lane. Which I would say is worth 1 Sun, because even though it's 2 Sun Mushroom, it's a random one that probably won't synergize with your deck, so that makes it 3 Sun worth of value in total for a 3 Sun trick. And then Conjure a Mushroom, which is about half Sun. So this is about 3.5 Sun worth of value for a 3 Sun trick, but it's a super rare, and I was comparing it to a common trick earlier, and it's supposed to be better than common trick, so I think this is rather balanced in terms of its value. It's a Kabloom Mushroom Seed trick, not much synergy there. Although there is something that conjures seeds in the Mega Grow class, if I remember right. Then the Shootout. This is my favourite card of the Kabloomy class, and probably my favourite trick in this set so far. Kabloom Super Rare Trick 4 Sun. Deal 3 damage to a random zombie or zombie hero for all the ammo you have. If the zombie hero blocks, stop firing but draw a card. The zombie hero does the same. So this is the reason why you might want ammo cards in your decks, and ones with lots of ammo. Because of this card. This card could be easily, with just 1 plant, there are a decent amount of plants with 6 ammo or something, that would instantly be making this 4 Sun trick deal 18 damage randomly. Even if it is randomly, that's 18 damage. Now that might seem completely broken, and it's definitely a good card. I imagine this will be good. If this became in the real game, I think it'd be seriously meta. But it would be easily blocked, and as I said, as soon as they block, you stop firing. Even if there's still zombies that aren't the hero to kill, you'll stop firing. You will draw a card to make up for it, but this is a 4 Sun trick on purpose, because obviously this is going to be very powerful, so I want to make the cost awkward to make up for the fact that this could be a little bit overpowered. The idea is, while this is clearly overpowered on its own, the block should help it make it more balanced, and on top of that, the fact that the zombies can play around this card very easily by simply running ammo cards themselves, that way they get to attack back. because the zombie hero does the exact same thing you do. Now, the chances are, since your deck is built around it, you are probably going to get better value out of this, which is why it's still worth it. But the fact that the zombies does the same, as you can imagine that some zombies would just run high ammo cards that aren't that bad in their decks just normally. Just play around this, which would definitely be interesting. Then there's the Green Gunslinger. This is basically Space Cowboy for the plants, but more fair, hopefully. Because it costs 5 instead of costing 4. It's a 3-2 instead of a 3-5 with strike through. And it activates instantly, which is technically better because it's burst damage, but activating instantly means that you can't buff it to increase its damage unless you hand buff it with onion rings and savage spinach, but that's really difficult. So this will be mostly useful for Captain Combustible and Speedo, which is one of the reasons why I like the way this is designed, even though I don't like Space Cowboy. I think this would be a good card because it works best with those two Kabloomy heroes, and those are two heroes who would be bad with this card usually. Captain Combustible basically does nothing but tempo or aggro, so it'd be nice to see him run onion rings in his decks and play the Green Gunslinger. That would kind of change his playstyle for the first time, well, ever. I don't think I've ever seen any moment in the entirety of Plants vs. Zombies history where Captain Combustible wasn't just either tempo or aggro. So that'd be finally a different type of deck for him. And then there's Speedo, because when played, this does a bonus attack. When this does damage, move to the right. When this moves, do a bonus attack. That's how it's like Space Cowboy. It moves like all the way to the right. But with Speedo, what you can do is you can use move a plant, draw a card to move this into the first lane and re-trigger its ability, and that's another 12 burst damage and a card drawn for 2 sun, when usually it would cost you like 5 to do that. So that's a way to make a bad card, move a plant, draw a card, viable, and to make a bad hero, Speedo, better. And then finally there's Sheriff Shroom, which is a card that I don't think is that crazy in terms of just the idea. I think it's very realistic and maybe not too game-breaking, but I think that if it became a real card, it'd be very fun. Sheriff Shroom, Kabloom Legendary Lawful Mushroom Plant, 5/4/6. When you do damage to a zombie, if there is room, summon a random mushroom that costs the amount of damage you did in the lane of the damaged zombie. So if you Berry Blast a zombie and there's room on its lane, you will summon a random 3-cost mushroom. If there is no mushroom of that cost, you summon one that costs 1 less, and if there's none of that costs 1 less, and so on. It rounds down, because if it rounded up, I imagine it'd be exploitable. If you did this to a zombie in the water lane, if you did 2 or more damage, you get to summon a sea shroom, but that's the only amphibious mushroom, so if you did 1 damage, nothing would happen. So yeah, I imagine this would be a very fun card. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one.